September 26, 1983. Serpukhov 15, a secret Soviet early warning facility buried in the forests south of Moscow. It is just past midnight. The air inside the command bunker is stale, heavy with cigarette smoke and the low hum of electronics. Fluorescent lights flicker over rows of consoles, each one glowing green with data pulled from space. Outside, the Cold War is frozen in rhetoric and suspicion. Inside, it is alive, humming, waiting. Lieutenant Colonel Stanislav Yevgrafovich Petrov sits at his station, shoulders slightly hunched, eyes fixed on the screens. 44 years old. Trained as an engineer, not a hero. His uniform is crisp, his expression controlled, but his mind is restless. He has the uneasy feeling that comes before a storm. Petrov is the duty officer tonight. That means if the system detects an American nuclear launch, he is the first human link in a chain that could end the world. The system is called OKO, a network of early warning satellites launched into highly elliptical Molniya orbits, designed to detect the infrared plume of intercontinental ballistic missiles lifting off from the United States. It is new, experimental, still being calibrated. Petrov knows its weaknesses intimately. He helped write parts of its operational logic. Others do not share his doubts. For months, Petrov has quietly questioned the system's reliability. He has raised concerns during briefings. He has pointed out edge cases, sunlight reflections, cloud interference, false positives. The response has been dismissive. Some colleagues have laughed. Others have warned him to stop asking uncomfortable questions. The system is the pride of Soviet strategic defense. Questioning it feels like questioning doctrine itself. Tonight, Petrov keeps those doubts to himself. The room is calm. Operators murmur softly. Keyboards click. Somewhere, a phone rings and is quickly silenced. The digital clock on the wall ticks toward 0:15. Then, without warning, a sharp electronic tone slices through the bunker. An alarm. Red letters flash across the main screen. For a fraction of a second, no one moves. Then training takes over. An operator snaps to attention. Another leans closer to his console. Petrov's heart rate spikes, but his face remains still. He stands, steps toward the central display. The system is reporting a missile launch from the continental United States. One missile, a single Minuteman ICBM, according to OKO's data. Petrov knows the protocol by heart. A detected launch must be immediately reported up the chain of command. From there, the information flows to the General Staff. From the General Staff to the political leadership. Minutes later, retaliatory forces could be ordered to launch. The clock is already ticking, but something is wrong. Petrov studies the screen. One missile makes no sense. American doctrine emphasizes overwhelming first strikes, not symbolic gestures. A lone missile would accomplish nothing except trigger retaliation. He asks for confirmation from ground-based radar. There is none. That, too, is not unexpected. Radar stations can only detect missiles once they crest the horizon, several minutes after launch. OKO is designed to fill that gap. The alarm sounds again. Another launch detected. Then another. The screen updates rapidly. 5 missiles. 5 nuclear warheads rising from U.S. soil. The room tightens. The operators look to Petrov now. Sweat beads on foreheads. A young lieutenant swallows hard. Someone whispers a curse under their breath. Petrov feels the weight settle onto his chest. If this is real, the Soviet Union has minutes, perhaps less, to decide whether to respond. If he hesitates and this is an actual attack, millions could die without warning. If he reports a false alarm, he could unleash a nuclear exchange based on a mistake. Petrov thinks of the political climate. It is 1983. One of the most dangerous years of the Cold War. Just weeks earlier, Soviet air defenses shot down Korean Airlines Flight 007, killing 269 civilians after mistaking the passenger jet for a spy plane. NATO has recently conducted Exercise Able Archer, rehearsing nuclear release procedures so realistically that Soviet intelligence fears It may be a cover for an actual first strike. Trust is gone. Suspicion is absolute. Petrov remembers those briefings. The certainty in the general's voices. The insistence that the Americans are capable of anything. The alarms continue to pulse, relentless. But still, no radar confirmation. Petrov's engineer's mind races. He knows Oko's satellites are positioned to catch missile plumes against the dark backdrop of space. He also knows it is early autumn. The sun's angle is low. High-altitude clouds over North Dakota could reflect sunlight directly into the satellite sensors. A perfect storm for false reading. He looks at the classification on the screen. Highest confidence. The system is insisting this is real. Everyone in the room is waiting for his call. Petrov picks up the phone. The direct line to Soviet command. And hesitates. His hand trembles slightly. If he reports this as an attack, history will move without him. If he reports it as a malfunction, history may never know his name. The alarms echo through the bunker. Time is bleeding away, and the world, unknowingly, is balanced on one man's judgment. The phone feels heavier than it should. Petrov holds it just above the cradle, the red casing worn smooth by years of drills and false alerts. This is not a training exercise. There will be no after-action report filed in neat binders. Whatever he says next will travel upward at the speed of doctrine. Around him, the bunker is unnaturally quiet. The alarms continue their mechanical pulse, but no one speaks. Every officer in the room understands what protocol demands. The system has spoken. The classification is highest confidence. According to the rule book, doubt is not a factor. Petrov lowers the phone slightly, buying seconds. He asks again for radar confirmation, his voice calm, measured. The response comes back unchanged. Still nothing. The missile tracks exist only in orbit, only in silicon logic and infrared readings filtered through algorithms that Petrov knows better than most of the men who trust them blindly. He exhales slowly. Petrov's mind drifts, not to ideology or patriotism, but to mechanics, to margins of error, to lines of code written under pressure, tested imperfectly, approved hastily to meet political deadlines. Oko was rushed into service. Everyone knew that. No one liked to say it out loud. He remembers arguing months earlier in a briefing room just like this one, pointing at charts that showed how sunlight at certain angles could fool the sensors. A colonel had waved him off. Another officer had laughed softly. The Americans won't attack with mirrors. Someone had joked. Now the joke is gone. The alarms sound again. 5 missiles. Still 5. Not dozens. Not hundreds. Petrov forces himself to imagine the American perspective. If this were a first strike, it would be massive, overwhelming, designed to paralyze Soviet command before retaliation could be ordered. 5 missiles could decapitate nothing. They would only guarantee a response. It doesn't add up. But doubt is dangerous. The Cold War has trained men to distrust intuition. Systems are trusted because people are fallible. That is the logic Petrov is expected to follow. The irony does not escape him. A junior officer finally breaks the silence. "Comrade Lieutenant Colonel, what do we report?" Petrov turns. The man's face is pale, his eyes searching for certainty. He does not want philosophy. He wants an order. Petrov realizes something then. The system may claim highest confidence, but in this room, he is the system now. Every machine has handed its verdict to a single human node. He thinks of his family, asleep somewhere in Moscow. He thinks of cities he has never seen, Omaha, Minot, Great Falls, names embedded in targeting maps. He thinks of what retaliation really means. Not defense, not justice, but annihilation measured in megatons and timelines. The phone vibrates faintly in his grip. Petrov closes his eyes for half a second. He makes his decision. He lifts the receiver and speaks into the line to higher command. "False alarm," he says. "System malfunction." The words are simple. Their weight is immeasurable. There is a pause on the other end. Questions come quickly, sharp, skeptical. What evidence? Why the confidence? Petrov answers carefully. He cites lack of radar confirmation. He cites implausible attack profile. He does not mention intuition. He does not mention fear. He mentions engineering. When the line goes dead, the bunker does not relax. If anything, the tension sharpens. Because now Petrov has done the most dangerous thing possible in a rigid system. He has contradicted it. The alarms continue. Minutes crawl by. If Petrov is wrong, the missiles will soon appear on radar. The warning time is short, very short. Every second that passes without confirmation stretches nerves to the breaking point. Operators glance repeatedly at their scopes. Hands hover over controls. Someone wipes sweat from his neck. The digital clock clicks forward with indifferent precision. Still nothing. 1 minute. 2, 3. Petrov's pulse hammers in his ears. He imagines the moment when radar suddenly lights up, when reality catches up and his choice is exposed as catastrophic hesitation. He imagines courts-martial, disgrace, history's verdict. But the scopes remain empty. Then 5 minutes pass. Radar should have seen something by now. The alarms finally fall silent. The red indicators vanish from the screens as abruptly as they appeared. The system resets itself, retreating into quiet, sterile normalcy. No missiles, no impact, no apocalypse. The room exhales as one. Some officers sink into their chairs. Others stare at the screens, stunned, as if expecting them to change their minds. A quiet murmur spreads. Disbelief, relief, confusion tangled together. Petrov does not sit. He stands there, phone still in hand, feeling the delayed tremor move through his body. His knees feel weak. His mouth is dry. The enormity of what almost happened presses down on him, now that the immediate danger has passed. No one congratulates him. No one embraces him. There will be no medals tonight. Instead, there are reports to file, explanations to prepare. The system will eventually be blamed on sunlight reflecting off high-altitude clouds over North America. A technical failure, logged and archived. Petrov will be quietly reprimanded for improper procedure. His superiors will not want attention drawn to how close the system came to catastrophe, or how much depended on one man's refusal to trust it. The Cold War will continue, oblivious. But in this bunker, on this night, a line was not crossed, and the world will wake up unaware of how narrowly it slept. The bunker does not celebrate. When the alarms fade and the screens return to their steady, indifferent glow, there is no applause, no release of laughter, no spoken acknowledgement of what has just been avoided. The Cold War does not reward hesitation, even when hesitation saves the world. Petrov finally lowers the phone back into its cradle. The plastic clicks softly, an ordinary sound, painfully out of proportion with what it represents. His hands are unsteady now. The adrenaline that held him upright drains away, leaving behind a deep, bone-level fatigue. Around him, officers begin moving again, slowly, as if afraid that sudden motion might summon the alarms back. One operator rubs his eyes. Another lights a cigarette with shaking fingers, the flare of the match briefly illuminating his face before being swallowed by smoke. The digital clock keeps ticking. 0:28. No missiles, no radar contacts, no confirmation of attack. Reality has sided with Petrov, but doctrine has not. A senior officer approaches him quietly. There is no anger in his voice, but there is no warmth either. You understand, this will be reviewed. Petrov nods. Of course it will. Everything always is. He knows how this system works. The purpose of OCO is not to be questioned. It is to be trusted. A system that requires judgment undermines the illusion of control. And illusions are critical in nuclear strategy. By morning, investigators will arrive. Technical specialists, political officers, men whose job is not to ask what almost happened, but who failed to follow procedure. Petrov returns to his chair and begins writing his report. His handwriting is precise, almost mechanical. He documents timelines, sensor readings, lack of radar confirmation. He avoids emotional language. He avoids conclusions. He knows better than to frame this as heroism. When dawn breaks above the forest, the world outside Serpukhov 15 remains unchanged. Moscow commuters board trains. Children prepare for school. Somewhere across the ocean, Americans wake without any sense that 5 Phantom missiles nearly rewrote history. The Cold War grinds on. In the weeks that follow, the official explanation is quietly determined. Sunlight reflecting off high-altitude clouds above the Great Plains of the United States had fooled Oko's infrared sensors. A rare alignment, an unforeseen vulnerability. The system is adjusted. Software is updated. The incident is classified. Petrov is not praised. He is not promoted. In fact, he is criticized, not for making the wrong call, but for filling out paperwork incorrectly during the crisis. A small reprimand, a convenient one. It is easier to focus on administrative errors than existential ones. Years pass. The Soviet Union collapses not in nuclear fire, but in economic exhaustion and political fracture. Files once buried in safes are unsealed. Former officers speak cautiously to journalists. And only then does Petrov's name surface, not in official commendations, but in interviews, footnotes, quiet acknowledgments from historians who understand how thin the margin truly was. When asked later why he did what he did, Petrov does not claim bravery. He does not speak of destiny. He says he relied on logic, on probability, on the simple fact that systems, no matter how advanced, are made by humans, and humans make mistakes. I had a funny feeling in my gut, he once admits. But that's not what I told them. The world prefers myths of fail-safe systems and rational deterrence. It is uncomfortable with the truth that on September 26, 1983, global survival hinged not on policy, but on one tired engineer trusting his judgment over a machine. Petrov lives the rest of his life quietly. No statues, no parades. He understands something few people ever will, that the most important decisions are sometimes made in silence, and that history often continues as if nothing happened at all. But something did happen. On that night, in a bunker south of Moscow, the Cold War blinked, and for the briefest moment, humanity was spared not by power, but by restraint.